lacrosse, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about, sharing it and coaching it and teaching it and just, introducing it to as many kids as I can. But also, I mean, now at this point in my life, it's primarily kids that, need another chance, another look, need another option. And that's where, HCC really, fits the bill. Really opens up a lot of doors for guys that had no idea what else was out there, for them.
Next question. You and I both have community college experience before graduating from a 4 year university. Um, I'll say that I think it was a good transition between high school and being out of high school for a little while and then going to a 4 year college classroom. Like I think community college is good in between there.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say or what do you say to your recruits, um, your prospective players when they're considering the junior college route, just in terms of academics and how that might be advantageous there.
Yeah. Well, academically, I think we have a very diverse group of players, and so I guess each recruiting process for each player is going to be a little different for me. So if I know somebody, because we have kids who come in with 4.0s out of high school. Howard Community College has a very, very strong academic program, but that doesn't mean it's like over or that it's crazy hard or there's an exorbitant amount of expectations placed on the students. It's just they take academics very seriously, and the 4 year schools around us and in this part of the country really respect that associate's degree. So for a student who has high grades and whatnot, my general push for them is going to be take your core classes here. Focus on finishing the core requirements for college, and then when you're ready to transfer, you can focus on the classes within your major. I kind of
Yeah.
push kids to not worry about what their major is going to be, especially the first year, because I think it's important that they satisfy those requirements that are going to be, required at the next place, so that they're not wasting their money. Because there's a lot of kids that come in saying they want to be a cop, and then they want to take criminal justice classes, and then after a year or two, they can decide that they want to be a teacher, and then they've taken those criminal justice classes and these other classes that don't necessarily transfer to the next 4 year school. So I think academically it's an opportunity to concentrate on your core classes and get them out of the way, because you're going to have to pay for them inevitably if you stay in school, but get them out of the way at a much cheaper cost, and that's going to limit the extra credits that a person will have to take if they potentially have to take if they focus on their major too soon, in my opinion. And so financially, it's much cheaper to go about that way. And then it also allows them to focus on their major, those last 2 years of school.
Yeah.
But also, the smaller classrooms at community colleges, generally you're not going to be in an auditorium or a lecture hall.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the class sizes are similar to most high schools. In fact, our class sizes are probably smaller than most high schools, at least in Maryland. I think legally in the public schools, the classroom size is 34 students. I teach at an alternative high school in the county, so my class sizes, are minuscule compared to what the state requirement is. But
Mm-hmm.
I believe the average class size at Howard is 20 students. And so, with that being said, you're not going to be a number at Howard as you would be at a 4 year where you're
Yeah.
taking your basic math or basic science classes in auditoriums with a couple hundred people.
Right.
The students get to know their professors. They can have a personal relationship with their professors if they choose to. They're easy to access, and so that helps. Also at Howard, we have a very, very strong student disability program. So for those students that have IEPs or 504s, we have a separate entity in the school that helps with those students, making sure that they're, keeping on task and most importantly, making sure that their accommodations are being fulfilled by the professors. So, a student with an IEP or will come to Howard and have their own counselor within that part of the school, the student disability services. So that's a huge benefit for a lot of kids, because a lot of kids tend to think that, once they're done with high school, accommodations are done, and that's not the case.
And I mean, I think it just speaks to just how available and accessible college education is. I mean, like the kid who maybe doesn't perform well in the classroom in high school, who has ADHD, and deals with that. Like a lot of those kids who I've coached think that, oh no, I can't go to college because you got to sit still, and the teachers aren't going to understand what I'm dealing with in high school, and like I don't want to go into that new environment where no one's going to be willing to deal with that. So I mean, that's even just reassuring as like I said, as a coach of young kids, knowing that there are places that these kids can go and be collegiate student athletes and still have that support and those resources. And that was a good point, like you said, about taking your core classes. That's something that, I mean, you probably know better than I do. There's the number of kids who walk around a college campus every day and mumble under their breath. This doesn't even have anything to do with my major. At U Dallas, every class you take in college is a class that's not somebody else's major. So we'd be so um, that was something that I was fortunate to have. To your point, I took all my basic classes, and for the most part basic classes. When I got to U Dallas, I basically focused on English classes and electives and things like that. So I already had a lot of that work done. I mean, I was definitely I was older than the average student, so like I knew I wanted to be an English major, and like I wasn't, I wasn't one of those kids who was going to change his major 3 or 4 times or whatever the stat is. Do you know off the top of your head that I've been trying to look it up and I've found some conflicting numbers from studies. Do you know what that statistic is? How frequently the average college student changes their major? I want to say 3 times in a career.
I think I've heard 3 times. I think it is 3.
Okay.
I confirm that. I don't have I don't have a source for that, but that sounds correct. Either 2 or 3.
Okay.
I know it's not 1.
Yeah.
So it's got to be 2 or 3.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it might even be 2 might be the average, and it's like, well, if 2's the average, you gotta have some 3s as well.
To Howard Student Disability Services, we have a woman by the name of Peggy Hayslip who was instrumental in starting athlete disability services for her student athletes at Johns Hopkins in the 70s, and she actually Howard CC. And so she has personally, been the counselor for a number of our students, and so she knows. I mean, she's kind of the backbone of the movement in the late 70s to provide service for athletes, and then work with the NCAA in conjunction with the NCAA to satisfy eligibility requirements and so forth. So, Peggy has been honestly just instrumental in our success, in both recruiting and just success, for kids to be able to transfer and move on.
So, moving on to specifics about the lacrosse program. I'm not going to ask for any playbook secrets or anything, but just
No,
you want to just give us some basic info on, and I just have a list of random things. You can talk about whatever you want. So, team travel, tryouts, game scheduling, uniforms, team equipment, if there are dues involved, and the practice schedule, and or anything else. Just I guess basically what your spiel is to an athlete who writes in and says, "I'd like more information on Howard CC's men's lacrosse program."
right. Okay. We honestly try to emulate the strongest programs, in NCAA 1, 2, and 3. I try to really match, or emulate what these programs do, not only in the practice schedule breakdown, but also in the responsibilities or the requirements of each student athlete. Now, we don't have, the money a lot of Division 1, 2, and 3 schools do have, but I think
Right.
our requirements are up there in comparison, but not as like intense as some, but in some cases more intense than others.
Mm-hmm.
But for instance, let's start with fall. So in fall ball, we start usually the first week of September and we end, November 1st. And so this year was a little different. We started September 15th and ended November 15th.
Okay.
But what that usually entails, and I'll break it down as if weren't dealing with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
What we usually do is we would practice on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we'd lift on Tuesday and Thursday. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'd also have team study halls. So after our lift, we would study. And then during the fall, we would have between 2 and 3 scrimmages with multiple teams. And so we try to scrimmage the absolute toughest competition we can. So it's Division 2, Division 3 schools. Division 1 schools, we haven't had the opportunity to scrimmage any Division 1 schools, but we do scrimmage some of the best Division 3 schools in the country, like Gettysburg, Salisbury,
Wow.
Steve, and other Division 3 schools that are just outstanding programs like McDaniel and Goucher. And these schools are all within a 2.5, 3-hour drive of our campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So generally we'll have some scrimmages during the fall, and then once fall is over, we have a certain number of hours we can work with the guys from the end of fall ball, usually until the middle of December, and that's usually team conditioning and whatnot, or stick work, a bunch of different things we do. We have 2 strength and conditioning coaches at HCC. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they've been furloughed. But if we didn't have COVID, all our lifting and training would be on campus. But because campus has been closed, the buildings have been closed, guys have been training, either with their old strength coaches or at one of the many gyms in the area. And we typically we run the fall like another fall ball would be run at say Salisbury. However, as coaches, we're not going to have the same amount of time in front of the guys as those coaches do at Salisbury, because the coaches at Salisbury, that's what their full-time job is. a good rule that I generally tell guys that I'm talking to is, prepare to spend 3 hours a day, 5 days a week during the fall, in lacrosse activity, whether that's going to be study hall or be lifting or it's going to be practice.
Yeah.
And so
3 hours a day. Okay.
sometimes we go over that. Sometimes we, are under that. I mean, a lot of it, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'll practice for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that will be it. And if they need to see the trainer or whatnot, yeah, we may hit 3 hours, but it's not like other schools. Where other schools are going to be, they're going to have a lot more time in front of the guys.
Right. Yeah. You only have so much access to them.
During the spring, it's a little different. It's probably going to be 4 hours, maybe. But then there's going to be some days where they don't see me and we don't do anything. So our season starts mid-January, and then if we are successful and we do, we complete well and we end up in the national tournament, we'll play till mid-May.
Right.
So, there's often times where I'll give guys 1-2 full days off with, no lacrosse unless they want to do something on their own. We have Huddle, which is what a lot of programs use now, but we also have, this online platform called Just Play where, guys can, study, watch tons of different film, watch tons of film of our opponents, and it's just broken down it's a real unique platform, real expensive platform, but I've found in the short time that we've been using it, because I decided to get it because of COVID, I've found in the short time we've been using it, it's pretty valuable. I'm not even all that good at putting the stuff up yet. I haven't really mastered that just yet. But, it's tough for, most community college coaches have other jobs. Like I teach full time. So, and one of my D coordinators comes up from DC. That's a 45-minute drive. And my other defensive coach doesn't get off work until 4:30. So it's not ideal, but it's clear that, my staff is just amazing. It's clear my staff is in it because they love it and they love the game and they love working with kids and our young men. And so, for example, there'll be days, there'll be practices where, one of my coaches might not be able to make it because, he's stuck in DC or, their kid's sick at home from school. That type of thing is commonplace at our school. I mean, not to say that it happens every week. It's very infrequent if it does happen, but, we kind of have to be prepared for anything as far as a practice plan goes. So, if I have to, I've been doing this a long time. If I have to change things up, I can do it on the fly pretty well.
Right. Would you say that just those factors, and I mean, again, I'm also familiar with those, those types of things that you have to deal with. Would you say that it sort of demands a little more from each individual athlete, like, because there's, like you said, you don't have as much time in front of them, so, like, do you think do you think the player at Howard Community College, maybe there's a little more required of them independently than if they were at a, a more funded, 4-year program where, those that commitment is kind of sort of scheduled into their daily routine?
Certainly. I think the guys, I'm going to send you a letter that one of our captains from last year wrote to me, and his name's Jack Watzik. He's probably going to be starting at Detroit Mercy this spring at attack for them, and he
Awesome.
Yeah, he's just a phenomenal kid, and he also, and then he came in last year after he had committed to Detroit because he wanted to He wanted to spend another season with us, and then the season was canceled. So, he basically, if you come into HCC and you want to, move on to the next level and be an impact player at the next level, you're going to have to put the work in on your own, just like you would, anywhere, honestly. If you want to start, at Maryland, or you want to start at Michigan or Salisbury or Stevenson, you're going to have to put the work in on your own. The same thing here. If you want to move on to the highest level possible, you're going to have to do stuff on your own. And this is just real, honestly, just like anything you do, right?
Right.
Unless you're incredibly gifted. And then if that's the case, you're probably not going to be at HCC to begin with. But, with us not having, I don't have a coach's office right now. I will in 2 years, because we're building a new athletic center, but 2-3 years. But, there isn't a hub for all the guys to, come and hang out on camp. There will be, but, fortunately the school has seen what we've done in athletics at HCC, because our other programs are outstanding. Our soccer program is outstanding, men and women's. Our men and women's basketball is outstanding. Our track and field is great. We got some incredibly devoted and talented coaches in the athletic department. And so, our programs all do well. The school has decided to build a new athletic center, which is crazy.
Yeah, right on.
So it's different in comparison to other schools, in comparison to other NCAA schools. Like, there isn't a central hub necessarily on campus where the guys all congregate, like a locker room where they can watch film. But, guys are always on the field shooting. And if they ever need anything, they just need to ask for a bag of balls or whatnot. So, if you want to succeed, and I think this goes with, like I said, with anything in life, you have to put forth effort. And extra effort is always going to make you go that much further. I want to jump back to the rest of the question, Josh, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
About tryouts, team travel. Let's say that we generally will go to, upstate New York. We'll go to Syracuse. We'll go to Batavia, New York, which is close to Buffalo. And then we'll go to Long Island. We also travel to some parts of New Jersey. And we will travel to West Virginia. There's a chance in the coming years that we, start traveling down to Florida and other southern states, because there's rumor that some of the junior colleges are going to be starting, men's lacrosse programs. And so, I don't know what our budget will look like. I don't know how much we'll have to fundraise to go down to Florida, but I think that's something that, may be in the cards eventually. Let's see. I'm looking at as far as tryouts. Yeah, we'll have tryouts. Generally, I try to keep everybody in the fall, as long as it's not, over 45 guys. I don't like having rosters of more than 45, because the goal of our program, and I don't know if I said this before, but the goal of our program is to get our student athletes on NCAA rosters where they can, contribute in the classroom and off.
Right.
Or contribute on the field and off. Contribute, be able to step onto an NCAA field or step into an NCAA program and contribute immediately. And so, with that being said, if I were to keep 50, 60 guys, not everybody's going to get film.
Yeah.
And so, I'd be lying if I said that every single player on every team I have gets significant highlight film, because that's just not going to happen. But if we keep our roster between 40 and 45, that is more popular, because we film practice and we get as much tape as we possibly can. Now, there's some guys that don't get much film either because they're hurt or, you know, they're ineligible, etc. But, you know, we really strive to get everybody on film and get something that we can, you know, share or they can share with college coaches. You know, that's pivotal in our success, I think, because the more guys that we get on NCAA rosters, the more kids will consider HCC, will consider Howard Community College.
Right. Yeah. So it kind of the cycle will kind of establish itself there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then the more kids we have to choose from, the better our teams are. You know, so like for instance, I had a young man and his mother come yesterday for a visit, and it was just a tour around the campus because none of the buildings are open. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, he came from, it was a 2.5 hour drive, and
wow,
he brought his mother with him and everything from, I guess he was from right outside of Philly, from a very well established club program, and he had suffered an injury going in his junior year, and he was unable to play. He was in between his senior or sophomore and junior year, so he didn't get much film. And so had he not been injured, he honestly wouldn't have made this trek, because he would be going somewhere, you know, a high level D3, mid, maybe high level D1 program. And so, you know, he asked about, you know, how the roster spots are and how playing time works and all that. And I'll tell guys, I'll be upfront with them. I'll say, look, I'm not going to spend my time or waste your time because we're capping our roster at 45. So if I think you can contribute, you know, we're going to do a tour. We're going to do a visit.
right?
And, you know, if I don't think you can contribute based on your film, you know, based on what I've seen or what I've heard, because I do my homework, you know, I'll just let the student athlete know that he can try out, but I'm not going to guarantee him a spot or anything like this. But a student athlete like that visited yesterday, you know, he's a student athlete that I can envision seeing significant playing time, him getting significant playing time based on what I saw in his film. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to start right away or anything like that. If he comes in and not a good teammate, well, then we'll have a discussion, and maybe HCC isn't for him. But, you know, generally, I won't waste student athletes' time, and I won't let them waste mine. Does that make sense?
I think there's an aspect of pride to the recruiting landscape where a kid's just like, yeah, I got an email from this coach or I got a letter from this coach. So like I think that it's definitely wrong to mess with that and like to lead kids on and just like I want to have big tryout numbers, so I'll put all this time into these kids but really I have no interest in recruiting them. I mean, so it's definitely respectable to just like, hey, I don't know based on what I've seen if you can contribute, but if you come to tryouts and you wow us, then you'll do that. But just like taking the guesswork out of it, taking the uncertainty out of it. Again, I mean, the whole thrust of this is just informing kids of alternative ways of getting recruited and things like that. And I think that's something really important that you touched on there is just like just letting them know, like it just being upfront and not, having a kid show up to campus for tryouts thinking that he's there for something that he's not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, and another thing that we don't do is we don't send out mass recruiting emails. I'm not going to get a list from a tournament or a list of club coaches or whatnot, and just send a mass email, saying we want their guys, because I think that's lazy, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I don't want kids thinking that I've seen them play, or that I know who they are when they're not, when I have no idea. And I do most of the recruiting. I do, if not probably I'd say 95% of the recruiting with my program, because my assistant coaches aren't paid squat, and I'm not paid squat. But yeah, I mean, I'm just not going to require my assistants to go out and watch a bunch of club film or watch a bunch of tournaments, unless of course they want to. Generally I have a pretty good eye, and I have a ton of resources around the country for players, and so if somebody recommends somebody, I generally can trust them, and I don't even need to watch film. And that's what's happened with some of our best players from out of state.
Right on.
So I try not to make it too complicated. If you can play and you're a good person, then we got a spot for you. But as we've gotten, because we've been top 4 in the country the last 4 years. I think as we've gotten better, a lot of the kids that I would have taken 5 years ago wouldn't, and kids that got significant playing time 5 years ago wouldn't see the field necessarily for us now, which is a product of success, I guess. And,
definitely good problem to have.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean those types of players that got playing time 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, wouldn't have a spot on our team. It's just going to be much harder for them to get significant playing time.
Right.
We weren't a bad team 4 or 5 years ago. We're pretty good, but we're much better now than we were then. Yeah. And I think that's a product of of our goal of getting as many guys as we possibly can on NCAA rosters.